why a pledge and why now? What's principally the reason behind this?
We need to have a pledge because we still don't have clean indoor air in buildings. We don't have health-based standards for buildings. We spend 90% of our time indoors, and we don't have any expectation of clean indoor air. It doesn't exist. We don't have it in hospital waiting rooms. We don't have it in schools. And we might have standards or guidelines that point to what should be best practices. But for example, building codes that are mostly adopted worldwide, both in the United States and other countries, tell you what the ventilation should be when you first build that building, but there's often no requirements after you build the building. So a school can go for years and never have ventilation checked. So we haven't fixed it. We have lots of guidelines to point to, and we haven't fixed it. So it's unacceptable that we don't yet have clean air indoors, and we don't have an expectation for it. And that's the purpose of the pledge, is to make clean indoor air a fundamental human right, to declare it for the first time ever as a global community, and to call for an action for governments at the highest level to prioritize this. Add a little more, and would love to have Bronwyn join in too. One thing that, I previously came at this from working at the White House, and we brought this to the highest level. And the analogy that I came across and we shared was that you turn on the faucet and you expect clean water to flow out of the faucet. And yet when you walk into a public building in the United States, we often have mechanical ventilation, so you can look up at the vents, but there's no expectation for clean air to be flowing out of those vents. And yet it can be just as impactful on your health of the water you drink as the air that you're breathing. And so this pledge is creating a symbolic, high level, really impactful from this basic of clean air should be a priority. And by hosting this event that we had last month and raising it at the highest level, it was trying to put it on the global stage to say, let's talk about this and really push both governments and individuals to demand clean indoor air.
And if I can jump in there, Simon, I think the other really key element about it was to create global solidarity on the issue. My background is in radiation oncology and more recently in tobacco control. And I've seen such great examples in those communities of how when you identify all of the key players who are working on an issue all across the world, if you can get everybody to work shoulder to shoulder and stand side by side at the United Nations, and ask for the same thing, and to say, look, we've all identified that this is a gap, this is important, and we are urging our leaders of all kinds to take notice and to act. There's an enormous power in that. And so I've been very fortunate to have been involved in previous global collaborations. And once I got involved in indoor air quality, I kept meeting great people all around the world working on the same issue and fighting the same challenges and running into the same barriers, and creating a global community of advocates, which has perhaps been a little bit missing from the indoor air community previously. There's been many experts working on it, and scientists and deep technical experts, but having a new community of advocates is really a powerful thing. And so it was such a pleasure to be there and to be alongside Georgia co-hosting that event at the United Nations. The energy in the room was, in my view, unmatched compared to any other conference or event that I have been to. It was full of optimism and positivity, and for those who weren't there, when we did launch the pledge at the United Nations, we had a signing ceremony, and we invited a representative of every organisation who had signed to come up and actually be part of the event at the UN by signing and having a photo and shaking hands with some of the experts who'd spoken. And we weren't sure how that would go. We didn't even know if we should include it, but it turned out to be, it was certainly my favourite moment of the event. It was a great team. There was just a great team spirit in the room, and it felt like together we could really make this happen.
I want to roll back a little bit to what Georgia said, because I think it's really interesting that you used the water analogy. And I think that's the thing about the pledge. You're rolling in behind a simple truth. And sometimes it's that logic, it's that simple truth, the intent behind what you're saying, that's what's missing. This is indoor environmental quality in the whole is a multidisciplinary venture of engineering and building science and public health and social science and governance, and the list goes on. And the risk is we all end up siloing. And as you say, there's plenty of experts, but sometimes what you need is an overarching truth, something that everybody understands instinctively is what we're saying as a collective, to roll in behind. Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely. And maybe I'll share my own story of how I arrived at this. And Bronwyn has her story of how she arrived, but it's interesting because I approach this as an engineer. So I'm a PhD engineer ready to roll up my sleeves and say, what is the technology that can solve this problem? And so when it rose to the forefront that we were in a respiratory disease pandemic and not using clean air technologies to remove pathogens from the air and be safer, I was like, oh, well, it's definitely a technology hurdle. So let me interview 36 experts and ask them questions and say, what can we do to have cleaner air in buildings in the United States? And so I went on around, kind of a roadshow for a month, and interviewed experts. And 90% of those technology experts said it's not a technology problem, it's an implementation problem. We don't have the willpower or the leadership to say go for clean indoor air. We haven't put funds to it. We haven't prioritized it. We haven't created capabilities for school district leaders or states or local leaders to do that. And that surprised me. It's easier if it's a technology problem. And of course, there's, a few technology improvements we still need and can help the issue. But I think, as you said, there hasn't been a prioritization of this or a demand or a cost of inaction for not having clean indoor air. And we haven't been able to describe the problem either with stronger advocate voices, like Bronwyn said, or from other angles to make leaders be very clearly aware of the cost of inaction, to say this is unacceptable. And I think that's where I didn't expect myself to be involved, as an engineer trained to be involved in some ways of like, how do we create a social movement around this? But as Bronwyn said, creating global solidarity to say this is a priority and we can't not act. Action is inevitable. That's what we want to drive. And so that's what we hope this pledge and the momentum from the United Nations event will help lead to.
Who's this for then, the pledge? Is it for the people signing it? Is it that by signing it, it makes it visible to another group? What's the purpose of the pledge itself? Who's the customer of this, if you like, ultimately?
Well, we would love to see more governments sign. I think governments are our ultimate customer in that they hold all the power that can create change for populations all across the world. But when we say governments, we have to be realistic. There's political cycles that we have to tap into. There's ministerial changes. There's people who have particular subjects or projects that they're interested in. And so with that pragmatic point of view, we don't just want to welcome federal governments. We want to welcome provinces or states, cities, councils. It doesn't really matter which sort of level of government. We want whoever is on board to sign up, because every signature at a government level will make the next one easier. It will help sort of turn that snowball, if you like, get it going, and with time it will grow and grow, and every new recruit is much easier to encourage to sign. But in addition, we are talking about businesses, schools, organisations, small and large, and we're very pleased that at the launch of the pledge, we had 165 of those organisations from over 25 different countries signing up to the pledge. Since then, I think there's been another 100 signatories. We haven't even had time to work through them and process them all. But that's in itself is really terrific to have organisations like, the US Green Building Council signing up, the Green Building Council of Australia. So sustainability, peak bodies, engineering groups, hospitals, school systems, you name it. Any organisation can sign up if they are, if this issue resonates with them and if they are keen to take some action. It is very symbolic, though, as Georgia mentioned. So this is a good-spirited, symbolic pledge. This is not about catching anybody out for doing the wrong thing or having any negative connotations. This is about seeing people and meeting them where they are and welcoming them on a journey of better. Not perfection, but of better. Making things better today than they were this time last year, and hoping that, and actually planning for next year to be better still. We know that achieving indoor air quality, unfortunately, takes some time. We understand that. We also know it's going to be a bit messy and imperfect, but that's okay. As long as we're moving forwards together as a community, we'll ultimately continue to be in a better place.